So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you guys Wilderness Survival Guide. So you're stuck in the wilderness now from a failed boat party. And the first thing you want to do, this is top priority when you get out there, is find shelter. And when you're looking for your shelter, you want to make sure that it's safe, of course, and it's on a flat, dry surface away from water, rocks, branches, cliffs, anything that can become a potential hazard if it was to fall and, let's say, hit your head. You just want to stay clear of things like that. And you also want it to be very well hidden to stay away from, or to keep you, as safe as possible. And the next thing you want to do is figure out what's important to the group. Let's say you're stuck out there with another person or a few other people. You want to make sure that you speak to them and see what they need and, try your best to get those things. And you want to decide on what kind of shelter. So you can have multiple types, but the two easiest, well, they're both kind of tricky, but one of the easier ones to make, if you absolutely need something like covering your head to protect you from weather, things like that, is try to find a cloth or a piece of material big enough to make a tarp. Or you can also gather a bunch of logs and branches up and stack them at a slant so you have a little bit of a cover. So the second step is to make a fire. So this is like second top priority. Before you do anything else, you want to learn and make sure you know how to make a fire. So one of the easiest ways to make a fire is doing a fire roll. And for this, you can use cotton. So we're gonna use our imaginations here and pretend like we have cotton. So the things you'll need is cotton, rust, charcoal, wood ash, very powdery material. It has to be powdery, but like not too powdery so we can make heat. So let me show you guys. So you want to take your piece of cotton and you want to take your, I'm just saying this is like wood ash. And then you want to, sprinkle your wood ash on top. And you want to roll it up. So it's something like this. And then you want to take it in between two pretty flat surfaces. So two common things that are used is a tree limb or two rocks. And you want to let's pretend like we have a tree limb here. You want to rub really fast. The things that are important here is speed and pressure. You don't have to be super strong to do this. You just have to roll really fast, really hard until you start to see smoke and you start to smell it. That takes about 15 to 20 seconds. And then after that, you can use that to make a larger fire. So the next step that's pretty important is to purify your water. So again, we're going to use our imaginations here. Let's pretend like we have a fire built. And you can use a bunch of things out there. Let's say you're unprepared. You lost pretty much everything and you don't have already a container, like a pot, a little pot or anything like that to boil your fire in. You can use a number of things, but some of the things you can use to make water is rocks, a wood container that you can build with some trees, mud, clay, bark, and you can also use really thick leaves like banana leaves if you find them out there. You can only survive 3 to 5 days without water, so you really have to make sure and kind of work fast that you have water around. Let's pretend like there's a fire going and I have a banana leaf. So what you want to do is put your water on top. Usually banana leaves are kind of like little boats. That if I was out there, that's what I would find first before trying to use any of the other stuff, because I feel like that's probably the easiest method. So then you pour you take some of the water, you put it over the fire till it starts to boil. And then you want to leave it boiling for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then after it's done boiling on top of your leaf, you want to wait until it cools down completely, obviously, and then it'll be safe to drink. Now, when you're out in the wild, there's a bunch of injuries that can happen. And I find that 2 of the most common injuries are bleeding and shock, and also fracturing or breaking a limb. So I'm going to show you guys how to fix both of those things on the most common body part that you can puncture or you can break. So this is my friend who got stuck out here with me in the wild, and he has a severe bleeding on his arm. He, I don't know, ran into like a tree branch or something that was really sharp, or he maybe fell and slid on some glass. So for that, you'll need a bunch of things. Well, not a bunch. You'll need to find some sort of cloth. And I know out there it might be hard. You might not have like gauze and stuff on hand. So you can use things, even though it might not be the most sanitary, but I feel like if you're out in the wild, sanitary might not be the first priority. One of the first priorities would be to, of course, stop the bleeding. So you can use cloth from your shirt, and things like that. Bandanas, if you have bought any out there or have any on you. So we're going to pretend like this is a cloth from like your shirt or something. And you want to put direct pressure on the wound. So you want to start by putting direct pressure on the wound like this. And you can keep adding more and more and more if the blood starts to soak up the first half, but you never want to take the first layer that you put on off at all. You want to make sure you keep that first layer of protection on. So start gathering up all the cloth that you can. That was one of the most common things used to stop bleeding in the wild that I found. If it gets too bulky, like if you keep adding, you can take layers off, but again, keep this first layer right on. And then you want to wrap the bandage in something. So you want to wrap it. We're going to pretend like what I would use, or what I found that people would use, is again another piece from their shirt, or let's say they had like a sock on from their shoes, they'd use that, as long as it's not like soaking wet. You want to wrap it and then tie it off. And you want to make sure when you wrap it, don't wrap it so tightly that it cuts off circulation. And then you also want to recheck circulation to make sure that you didn't cut it off by tying this too tight. Oh, and also before, you want to make sure they have circulation before you start anything. I forgot to mention that earlier. Now, let's say you cannot stop the bleeding. You can make a tourniquet, and this is like the last resort option, because I feel like with tourniquets, they're pretty risky if you do not do it correctly. So let's say you have a belt on you. Another thing that people used out there is more material from clothing. They could use their shoelaces if they had on sneakers. So I'm gonna use a belt today. Let's pretend like I had a belt on while I was out there. And you want to tie it right above or right below the injury site. You don't want to put it on. You do not want to make sure the material that you're using is too thin, because it can cause even more problems. It can dig into the tissue and make more bleeding happen. And remember that 1 quart for an adult, 1 quart of blood lost for an adult is all it takes for the body to go into shock. And let's say you're with a child, all it takes is 1 pint. So you want to tighten it right above the injury site like this. Now, again, like I mentioned earlier, another common injury is a broken bone. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a soft splint. So my guy also, when he fell, he broke his ankle. Now for that, I'm also going to use this belt again. And I'm going to use this sock to make the soft splint. So to make a soft splint out in the wild can be a little bit tricky because you might not have all the resources out there. But the only reason why you would want to make a soft splint is if you can't get like EMT or a professional help in time and you have to move them somewhere else. So things that are commonly used for a soft splint are sleeping bags, jackets, pillows, like things like that. So let's say you're out there and you happen to have a jacket on you. You would, before you use the jacket, you want to take the things you're going to tie it off with. So you can use a belt, you can use a long enough sock, a bandana, more cloth from your shirt. So you want to take as many as it takes to tie it off. 2 might not be enough. Actually, 2 probably isn't enough for a fully grown adult. So then after that, you want to make a U shape with your jacket, anything that you find that is squishy and sturdy enough to use as a soft splint. Again, well, not again, I don't think I mentioned this before. If they have on shoes, you want to keep it on because you can use that to your advantage. You don't want to take it off and then end up messing up with circulation and things like that. So after that, you want to use your, actually, let me do it like this. There we go. You want to use your objects that you've found, like a sock, or if you had a belt on, a bandana, cloth, and tie it off at the top. So again, you want to, after that, you want to make sure you check for circulation. And for a foot, that can be a little bit tricky because you can't really check for a pulse at somebody's foot. So you want to just ask them basic questions, like if they can feel this or if they can wiggle their toes and things like that. And that's pretty much it for this survival guide video. I hope that it was kind of helpful, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.